Every wound hides a map. Pain is the ink, experience is the paper, and the destination is the strongest version of the self. Yet most turn away from this map, fearing where it leads, not realizing it points to the exact place where strength is born. Emotional pain is not an accident. It is not a flaw in the design of life. It is a messenger sent to reveal the parts of the self that have been abandoned or forgotten. Hidden in these moments of suffering is the key to transformation, a process that can turn what feels unbearable into the very foundation of resilience and power. Pain is not simply an obstacle to be pushed aside or a disturbance to be numbed. It is the voice of the psyche calling attention to what lies in darkness. In depth psychology, this contact with the hidden side of the personality is called the shadow. The shadow is the unseen counterpart within. It holds not only impulses and traits that have been judged and rejected, but also capacities of great value that have been exiled from daily life. Every time emotional pain appears, it signals that a lost part of the self is asking to be seen, understood, and brought back into the light. Imagine walking through a house you have lived in all your life. You pass familiar rooms every day, but there is one locked door you never open. Behind it is a space filled with things you have forgotten exist. Some of what lies there is tangled in dust and cobwebs, but among it are treasures, strengths, and truths that could change everything if you claimed them. Pain is the sound of a knock from behind that locked door. Most people keep walking, pretending not to hear. Some run from it. But the transformation begins for those who stop, turn toward it, and open the door. Avoidance is what the modern world teaches. Discomfort is treated as an error in the system that must be fixed immediately. There is always an escape offered, a new distraction, a new diversion, an endless stream of images and sounds to fill the silence. But avoidance is not neutral. Pain left unacknowledged does not fade. It burrows deeper, growing more potent in the unseen places of the mind. The less it is faced, the more control it gains. When pain is ignored, it often returns in other forms. A sudden burst of anger over something small. A dull anxiety that seems to have no source. Patterns of loss or disappointment repeating through different situations and relationships, as if life itself is arranging events to point back to the same unresolved truth. These are the masks that unacknowledged pain wears. Every emotion, no matter how unpleasant, carries a meaning. Anger reveals the places where boundaries have been crossed. Sadness points to what is cherished and irreplaceable. Fear marks the edge of the territory where growth is waiting. To refuse these signals is like discarding letters written to you by your deepest self. They do not stop coming, they simply arrive in ways that are harder to ignore. Transformation begins with the courage to name the pain. To describe it clearly. Vague language lets it hide. Precision forces it into the open. Betrayal. Loss. Humiliation. Shame. Fear. To call it by its true name is to loosen the hold it has on the mind. When something nameless becomes named, it becomes smaller than the one naming it. The act of naming pain shifts it from a shadowy presence into something that can be examined. Once the pain has been named, trace it to its source. Every wound has a beginning. Follow it back to its first appearance. Ask when this feeling first came into being. Search for the moments, large or small, that planted its seed. See the beliefs that grew from it and shaped choices over the years. Often the present hurt is tied to something much older, something carried forward again and again. In uncovering the origin, the hold of the pain in the present moment begins to weaken. Beyond the pain is the shadow. This part of the self has been locked away not because it is entirely bad, but because it once caused conflict or discomfort. Hidden within it are traits and strengths that have been left undeveloped. A child shamed for being too sensitive may grow into an adult who hides all signs of vulnerability. Yet sensitivity, once reclaimed, becomes the very foundation of deep empathy and connection. Someone silenced in youth may spend years speaking little, yet the quiet observation developed during those years can become the wellspring of great insight. Integration is the process of bringing these hidden parts back into daily life. The wound is not erased, nor is the past undone. Instead, the experience is woven into the larger story of the self. What was once seen as a weakness is transformed into a source of strength. This is not a quick task. It unfolds over time, through repeated acts of awareness and acceptance. It is the slow work of allowing the shadow to walk beside the conscious mind, uniting into a more complete whole. True transformation is proven in the choices made afterward. Insight alone changes nothing. It must be lived. Growth is shown in the moments when decisions are made from clarity instead of fear, when new possibilities are chosen instead of old patterns. The shadow no longer drives actions from behind the scenes, it becomes a conscious ally, adding depth and resilience to the personality. Crisis often provides the clearest view of this process. Periods of great loss, upheaval, or isolation can strip away distractions and force the confrontation that has been avoided. In the silence of such times, the voice of the psyche becomes easier to hear. Insights that were once drowned out can rise to the surface. Paradoxically, what feels like an ending can be the start of a profound new chapter. Imagine someone who loses a career suddenly. At first, the shock is overwhelming. Then, in the stillness that follows, realizations emerge. The work, while stable, had been misaligned with deeper values for years. The collapse, though painful, is a release from a false life. The loss becomes an opening to pursue something more authentic. This is the essence of turning pain into strength. The unwanted event becomes the doorway to a more truthful existence. Not many will willingly choose this path. The challenge is not in knowing what to do, but in staying with the discomfort long enough for it to work its transformation. The culture of quick fixes offers countless ways to turn away, but turning away only ensures the pain will return in another form. The slower path requires patience, honesty, and the willingness to stand still in the presence of pain until it reveals what it holds. Pain can be thought of as raw or from the earth. Its value is not visible at first. Only through the fire of sustained attention and the careful work of understanding can its worth be revealed. This refining process can take many forms: quiet self-reflection, speaking openly with a trusted friend, creating art that gives shape to what is felt, or working with a guide who can help navigate the inner terrain. The form matters less than the willingness to remain present with what arises. The work of turning pain into strength mirrors the ancient craft of alchemy, which has often been used as a metaphor for psychological transformation. The alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, but their deeper quest was for an inner change, the transmutation of the human soul. In the psychological sense, pain is the base metal. Awareness and integration are the heat and crucible. The gold is the self that emerges, stronger, clearer, and more whole. The first stage of this transformation is confrontation. Just as the alchemist begins by acknowledging the lead before him, the psyche begins its work by facing what is truly there, without denial or disguise. Confrontation does not mean aggression, it means meeting the reality of the wound with clarity. This is often the most difficult stage, for it strips away the protective illusions that kept the pain at a distance. The second stage is endurance. Transformation is not a single moment of realization but a sustained engagement with what has been hidden. Endurance allows the heat of awareness to do its work, softening what was once rigid, loosening what was once stuck. This can be uncomfortable, but it is the necessary fire in which the raw material is prepared for change. The third stage is integration. Here, what was once rejected or feared is brought into the whole of the self. The shadow is no longer an unseen force working against conscious intentions but becomes a source of strength and creativity. This integration does not mean acting out every impulse or desire, but rather understanding them, owning them, and allowing them to contribute to a more complete life. This process is echoed in myths across cultures. In the Greek story of Persephone, the young goddess is taken into the underworld by Hades. Her descent is a loss, a separation from the world above. Yet in her time below, she gains knowledge and depth, returning each year to bring the renewal of spring. The descent represents the encounter with the shadow, the time spent in the depths of the psyche. The return symbolizes integration, bringing the gifts of that journey back into conscious life. The same theme appears in the Sumerian myth of Inanna, the goddess who descends into the underworld, stripped of her symbols of power at each gate, until she stands naked before her dark sister. She is killed and later revived, returning to the upper world transformed. These stories are not just about gods and goddesses, they are mirrors of the human inner journey. Every confrontation with pain is a descent. Every return with new strength is a form of rebirth. In modern life, this descent can take many shapes. The loss of a loved one, the collapse of a relationship, a serious illness, or the failure of a cherished dream, each can pull a person into the depths. The instinct is often to escape, to climb back to the surface as quickly as possible. But if one can stay in the depths long enough to listen, to learn, to see what is truly there, the return will be different. It will be stronger, richer, and more whole. Endurance in the depths is not a matter of gritting one's teeth and waiting for time to pass. It is an active engagement with the reality of the situation. This can mean exploring the feelings without judgment, allowing grief to move through its natural stages, or questioning the beliefs that shape the old way of living. Sometimes it means seeking help, not as a way to bypass the pain, but as a way to navigate it more wisely. In this work, symbols can become powerful allies. The psyche speaks in the language of images, and dreams often carry the messages that the conscious mind has missed. A recurring dream of being chased, for example, may reflect an emotion or a truth that has been avoided in waking life. A dream of a locked room may point to the very parts of the self that need to be explored. By paying attention to these symbols, one can begin to understand the deeper layers of the pain and what it is asking for. The unconscious mind holds not only the wounds but also the resources needed to heal them. This is why Jung described the psyche as self-regulating. It seeks balance, wholeness, and growth. Pain is one of the ways it signals that something is out of alignment. By responding to this signal with attention rather than avoidance, the psyche can guide itself toward a more integrated state. The alchemical process of transformation also involves patience. Just as gold is not made in a single day, the work of turning pain into strength cannot be rushed. Impatience can lead to shallow solutions that cover the wound without truly healing it. The deeper work takes time, and in that time, something more lasting is created. Consider the metaphor of a tree in winter. Above the ground, it appears lifeless, stripped of leaves and fruit. Yet below the surface, the roots are drawing in nutrients, growing stronger, preparing for the renewal of spring. In the same way, the times of apparent stillness in life, when pain is being worked through slowly, are often the times of the most profound growth. By the time the integration is complete, the relationship with the pain has changed. What was once seen only as an enemy is now recognized as a teacher. The story of the wound becomes a story of resilience. The energy that was once trapped in avoidance is now available for living more fully. The shadow has been brought into the light, and with it, the self has become more whole. This wholeness is not perfection. It is not the removal of all flaws or the achievement of some ideal state. Wholeness is the full acceptance of all parts of the self, both light and shadow, both strength and vulnerability. It is the recognition that the experiences once thought of as obstacles have in fact been the shaping forces of character. In this sense, the wound does not disappear, it becomes part of the design, like a vein of color in a stone, giving it uniqueness and beauty. When pain has been transformed in this way, it changes the way life is approached. Challenges are no longer seen solely as threats but as opportunities for further growth. The presence of difficulty becomes a signal to look more closely, to ask what is being revealed. Instead of shrinking away from discomfort, there is a readiness to engage with it, knowing that within it lies the potential for new strength. This change is often visible to others, even if they cannot name it. There is a calmness, a steadiness, that comes from having walked through the depths and returned. There is less fear of the unknown, because the unknown has been faced before and found to contain not only danger but also treasure. This quiet confidence is one of the marks of true transformation. The journey from pain to strength is not one that ends. Life will continue to present new challenges, new losses, new descents into the depths. But each time, the process becomes more familiar. The fear lessens. The trust in the ability to return grows stronger. What once seemed unbearable now becomes the ground for further becoming. In some traditions, the scar is seen as a badge of honor. It is proof of survival, of having faced what could have broken the spirit and emerged whole. In Japanese art, there is a practice called kintsugi, in which broken pottery is repaired with gold, making the repaired object more beautiful than it was before it was broken. The break is not hidden but highlighted, transformed into a mark of value. In the same way, the work of transforming pain into strength does not erase the past but makes it part of a new, stronger whole. The psychological equivalent of kintsugi is the process of individuation, the lifelong journey toward becoming the fullest version of oneself. This journey requires encounters with the shadow, with pain, with the parts of life that are difficult to face. Each encounter, when met with awareness and integration, adds to the richness of the self. The gold of wisdom is laid into the cracks of experience, creating a life that is both strong and deeply human. This process also changes the way the pain of others is seen. Having faced one's own depths, there is a greater capacity for empathy. The suffering of others is no longer something to be avoided or minimized but something that can be met with presence and understanding. This empathy is not pity but a recognition of shared humanity. It is the knowledge that the same fire that refines one soul can refine another. In this way, the transformation of pain into strength is not only a personal process but a gift to the community. A person who has integrated their shadow, who has found meaning in their suffering, carries a light into the lives of others. They become a reminder that pain need not be the end of the story, that within the most difficult experiences lies the possibility of renewal. The ultimate lesson of this journey is that pain and strength are not opposites. They are partners in the work of becoming whole. Pain breaks open the shell of old patterns and beliefs, allowing strength to emerge. Strength, in turn, allows the next encounter with pain to be faced with greater courage and wisdom. This cycle, repeated throughout life, deepens the self and expands the capacity to live fully. There will always be moments when the descent into pain feels like a fall into darkness. But those who have walked this path know that darkness is not the absence of light, it is the womb of transformation. In the quiet, in the stillness, in the space where old forms dissolve, the seeds of the new self are taking root. The return to the surface is not a return to who one was before but an emergence into a new form, carrying the gold of hard-won wisdom. This is the method by which emotional pain becomes strength, by turning toward it instead of away, by listening to its messages, by uncovering the shadow it points to, by enduring its fire, and by integrating what is found there into the whole of the self. It is a path that requires courage, patience, and honesty, but it leads to a strength that is unshakable because it is rooted in truth. In the end, the question is not whether pain will come, it will. The question is, what will be done with it when it arrives? Will it be avoided, denied, and left to grow in the shadows? Or will it be faced, understood, and transformed into the gold of the soul? The choice belongs to each person, and in that choice lies the power to shape not only the course of life but the very nature of the self. For those willing to take this journey, to see pain not as an enemy but as a guide, the reward is not just the absence of suffering but the presence of a deeper, truer strength. This strength is not loud or boastful, it is steady, quiet, and enduring. It is the kind of strength that can face the storms of life without breaking, because it has been forged in the fire of transformation. And so, when the next knock comes from behind the locked door of the self, there is no need to turn away. Open it. Step inside. See what waits in the shadows. For within those shadows lies not only the pain that has been feared but also the treasure that has been sought all along. There is another dimension to the transformation of pain into strength that reaches beyond the personal. Every individual exists within a larger whole, and what is carried inwardly is never entirely separate from what is shared by the collective. The psyche contains layers, the personal conscious mind, the personal unconscious, and beneath both, the collective unconscious. This collective layer holds patterns and images that have been shaped over countless generations, known as archetypes. These archetypes are the building blocks of the human story, and they appear most vividly in times of crisis and transformation. When emotional pain strikes, the figures that rise in dreams and imagination often belong to these deeper layers. They may appear as wise guides, shadowy adversaries, nurturing figures, or tricksters who unsettle what seemed certain. Each carries a symbolic meaning that points to some part of the journey. Recognizing these figures as archetypal can shift the perspective. The pain is no longer seen as an isolated, random misfortune but as part of a timeless human pattern. For example, the archetype of the wounded healer appears in many traditions. It is the figure who has suffered deeply and, through the process of healing, gains the ability to help others. The pain is not erased, it becomes the source of wisdom and compassion. Seeing one's own suffering through this lens can bring a sense of purpose, a recognition that the personal story is part of something vast and enduring. Another important pair of archetypes is the anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine aspects of the psyche. In Jung's view, every person carries both, regardless of gender. Pain often arises when these aspects are out of balance, when one is repressed or ignored. The anima brings qualities of receptivity, intuition, and emotional depth. The animus brings qualities of action, clarity, and structure. Healing often involves bringing these aspects into dialogue, allowing them to work together rather than in opposition. Consider someone who has long denied the anima within, valuing only logic and control. Emotional pain might come as a flood of feelings they cannot explain, forcing them to face what they have neglected. By listening to this inner voice, by allowing vulnerability to have a place, a new balance emerges. Likewise, someone who has lived entirely in feeling without the structure of the animus may find that pain calls forth the ability to set boundaries, to take decisive action. In both cases, the discomfort becomes the catalyst for greater wholeness. The collective unconscious also explains why certain myths, symbols, and stories feel strangely familiar even if they have never been read or heard before. They are echoes of the shared human experience, and in times of pain, they rise to the surface to offer guidance. This is why an image in a dream can feel as if it carries ancient wisdom, or why a story told thousands of years ago can describe the present moment with uncanny accuracy. Recognizing the collective dimension of pain can also lessen the sense of isolation. Suffering can make it seem as if no one else could possibly understand. Yet when the same patterns are seen in myth, in art, in the lives of others across time and culture, the experience becomes connected to the whole human story. There is comfort in knowing that countless others have walked this path and returned with treasures of their own. The transformation of pain into strength is not solely for personal benefit. What is integrated within the individual ripples outward. A person who has faced the shadow, balanced the inner masculine and feminine, and found meaning in their suffering carries a certain presence into every interaction. This presence is felt by others, sometimes without a word being spoken. It is the quiet assurance that difficulty can be endured, that meaning can be found even in the most challenging circumstances. In the final sense, the work of transformation is a service to life itself. By turning toward pain, by listening to it and integrating its lessons, the individual participates in the ongoing evolution of the human soul. Each act of healing adds to the collective store of wisdom, making it easier for others to take the same journey. And so the invitation remains, always, to step toward the places within that hurt the most. To see the figures that rise from the depths not as enemies but as messengers. To allow the fire of awareness to refine what is raw into what is strong. To return from each descent with something of value, something that can be offered to the world. Pain will come again, as it always does. But with each cycle, the relationship to it changes. The fear lessens, the trust grows, and the capacity to walk into the depths with open eyes expands. This is not the end of suffering, but it is the end of being ruled by it. It is the beginning of living with the kind of strength that does not vanish when the storm arrives, because it was born in the heart of the storm itself.